So these are the tools you are going to need to replace your battery management system. Up top we have a 4x4, we have a flashlight, we have electrical tape, a different color masking tape, Gorilla tape, markers, a plastic pop rivet removal tool, a Phillips head, a 10mm wrench, caulk, an impact wrench, and the new BMS. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you remove all the cables, including the CAN bus, the cables, and the way you're going to remove this fuse is the first thing you're going to do is lift up on this tab, and then you're going to pull up from the center. And then once it's about most of the way done, there's a tab right here that you have to push, and you push, pull back at the same time, and lift. That will prevent you from breaking the fuse. We are going to take apart the battery one nut and bolt at a time. What you're going to need is the 10mm wrench and your electric impact wrench. And there is a way to hold this to prevent yourself from crushing your fingers. You're going to want to lightly place on the palm or the flat part of your fingers and then grip gently with the top so that there's no fingers showing across the top. Otherwise, if you have your fingers like this, your fingers will get crushed as the wrench turns. So you're going to want to, again, lay your fingers flat, put your thumb gently on top, and make sure that none of your fingers are wrapped or exposed from the other side. So I'll show you the first one. And it's that easy. So do that again. Again, lay your fingers completely flat. You can use your thumb as a guide if you need. And there goes another one. We're going to come back as soon as all the rest of the bolts are done. For some people, it may be easier to hold the wrench like this. Again, make sure that your fingers do not overlap on the side. If you want to try and hold the bolt itself or the nut to verify that it won't back off onto you or come out of place, you can see this right here. I'm going to place my fingers so they do not fold over, nice and flat. And you can put the wrench against the side of the battery, just like this, so that when you start to spin the wrench, it will automatically impact the side of the battery case instead of your fingers. Alright, so we are going to now remove the top of the case using the plastic pop rivet remover. I'm just going to lift that up. Then we're going to put our 2x4. And the first thing we're going to do, this is going to be the left side, and this is going to be the right side. And since this is the top, since it's facing me, also the top. So once you get your labeling done, so we're going to use the same plastic tool from earlier, and what we're going to do is we're going to gently try to remove some of the silicone away from the wires so that it'll be easier to remove. So once I got that one off, I'll move on to this one. You want to be careful not to mess with any of the wires while separating it from the silicone. And then we are going to gently pull on the tabs. We're actually going to start with this one. Pull that one out. Then we're going to start with the next one. Pull this one out. And once these two are done, you can remember that the right side has the black cable and the left side does not have any black cable. So once you've got these two cables unplugged, we are just going to shimmy the BMS up. So you're going to take all the components with it. So as you're shimmying it up, you're going to want to start to remove the black foam because these wires are going to prevent you from pulling it up all the way. So we're going to use that same tool from earlier to separate some of the silicone from the black foam. And then once we do that, we can start to peel back the black foam. You want to try to keep it as much intact as possible because we are going to reuse that to protect the new BMS when we put it in. Once you get this up and you remove most of the foam while keeping it intact, you can actually peel this back and remove it a little. And then once we get on a good angle, we peel this back as well, remove the protecting layer. What I'm actually going to do real quick is label it as top, so that when we peel it back, we'll know that this was the top once again. So now we're going to flip it to peel the rest of the black foam off. Not all of it's going to come off well, but you just need most of it. So next, we're going to peel this back off. And label this bottom. Just leave a B for now. You can tell the bottom because it has 3 wires instead of 2, and it also has the black foam to protect the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to remove these 3 bottom cables. I'm going to start with the temperature sensor, and then I'm going to remove the CAN bus, and then the last thing I'm going to remove is the USB. That'll make it easier for me to get into these wires. So now that we've removed these cables, we are going to begin removing the power cables. So what you're going to need is a Phillips, and you're just going to start on the side. And the next thing you're going to need nearby is you're going to need your electrical tape, because it is very important that these cables and nuts do not touch anything with potential grounding. So once I get near the end, I'm going to back it out and kind of back it out with my hand and make sure it doesn't fall down. Then I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to get my electrical tape. And to make it easier on yourself, when you do wrap it, I start at the bottom, work my way to the top, and once it is completely wrapped, the end result, you should fold back the top on top of itself, make a little tail, so that when you do go to remove it, you just pull back and it'll be much easier. Wrap it once again. I'm going to leave a little extra, just like last time, so that I can make a tail. And additionally, what I'm going to do to show that this one, the second one that I removed, is the top, I am going to use that masking tape from earlier, and I'm going to put the masking tape on it so that I know that this one is the bottom. So in order to prevent myself from forgetting which of these cables are which, the one that goes to the bottom will always be slightly longer, so that's one way you can tell the difference. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the shorter cable, which is the top cable, using masking tape. You can also tell that this is the bottom because we labeled it earlier. So the longer cable goes to the bottom, and the shorter cable goes to the top, and I labeled it with the masking tape to help remember. So once you remove the final set of cables, and again the shorter one goes to the top, so we are going to label that again with our blue masking tape. The shorter one goes to the top, the longer one goes to the bottom. What we're going to do is we are going to take our labels and we are going to mirror that onto our new BMS before we put it on. So I'm going to grab my marker real quick. And one way to identify which side is the top is there's this kind of T shape, which makes it easier to tell that this is the top. It is the same thing over on this side. Looks like T because it is the top. And the way we are going to do this is we are going to mirror the labels. So again, the T is the top, T is the top, and I'm just going to mirror these labels and put an L on this side, put a top in the middle, and put an R on the right. So this way, once we put the BMS in, we will know which side is which. And I'm also going to flip this over real quick, and I'm going to label this one bottom so that I can clearly identify. So there is an order to how you have to replug this in, and first is going to be the temperature sensor, and then we are going to use the CAN bus, and then we are going to plug in the USB. So this orientation, you can tell it goes from the top, so this metal part is going to be closest to you and at the edge of the battery. So when you flip it, my orientation for the bottom is written in the way that it should be plugged in. There are 2 bottom clips to show the 2 gaps at the bottom of this, and that's how they line up. So the first thing I'm going to do, the all black cable is the temperature sensor, so I'm going to plug that in. And then the next cable is the CAN bus sensor, which I'm going to plug in. It has 1 red wire and 1 black wire. And then the last one is the USB with 2 red wires and 1 black wire. And once that order is in, you are going to be able to flip it back to its correct orientation. And I already have a piece of tape ready to tape this back across the edge of the surface. So once these are plugged in, we are going to use the caulk gun, and we are just going to apply some caulk to the ends to help secure the connections and make sure that there's no rattling. And once that is all done, you can use a piece of Gorilla Tape to then secure it even more. We are going to wrap it so it goes around the cables at the bottom. Then we are going to take that piece of black foam from earlier. We are going to apply it to the bottom as well. Now it does have some adhesive already from previously on the other BMS, but I am going to put more Gorilla Tape down just in case. Make sure that really stays in place. And then remember that the silver part is the side that goes towards you. So once you add the foam and the Gorilla Tape, what you're going to do is you're going to tape the cables to the back to secure them so they don't make any noise, and then you are going to reuse the foam from earlier as well. You can apply that to the back of it. You want to use the part that has a gap where the cables are so that they have a little bit of space. You can use some Gorilla Tape at the top and bottom, just a little bit, to make sure that it's not going to come off. Be sure when you put the Gorilla Tape on, you're not blocking any of these vital parts, because on the top side, you see that the Gorilla Tape could potentially cover some of these, and you do not want that. So now that we got the back part secure, we are going to flip it back so that you can see the top, the left. This is your left side closest to you. And then what you're going to do is you can gently start to slide it in as it was to get your orientation for the screws. Readjust the cables if you'd like. And just like earlier, as I labeled them, the shorter one, which I labeled with blue masking tape, is the top one. So this is going to go to the top on the right side, and the longer one's going to go to the bottom on the right side. When we go to plug these in, you're going to have to make sure that the orientation of the cable is upright, so it will look something like this. Once you plug it in, it will be upright, and this one also will be upright. They will both be in this upright position, because once this whole BMS slides in like that, if these are not oriented correctly like this, and then there won't be enough space. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to show you what the end result looks like. So another tip is, when you're looking at these cables, the flat part, there is a flat part, there's a little bit of a raise here if you can see that. The flat part is the part that connects with the surface. So you want to get it as close to possible to the surface. So that would look something like that. So once you have plugged both those wires in, I'm going to use caulk to cover the connections and make sure that they are securely fit. Make sure that there's no rattle or chance of them coming loose afterwards, and again, make sure that the wires are oriented up so that when I do slide this down, we'll have no problem with space. So now we are going to approach the left side. It is easier to start with the bottom, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with the bottom, which is the longer cable. And again, you want to make sure that the flat part is against the connection to make sure the connection is as tight as possible. Once you finish adding silicone to the left side, you can start to slide it in. And I'm going to use the plastic protector as I labeled it from earlier, top, and I'm going to stick that in between. Give it a little space, stick that in between. I'm going to slide that down. Once everything is nice and snug in there, I'm going to plug in the last of the cables, and we are going to plug in the right side, which has the black cable. You're going to plug that in real quick, and then we are going to plug in the other cable with all red wires. And then the last thing we are going to do is we are going to use the caulk gun again, and we are going to caulk the whole top layer to make sure that nothing rattles in the end. Kind of get in on the sides just a little bit. And then I'm going to secure the cables. And that should be everything. So the last step would be to put the cover back on. We'll obviously remove the plank first, and then put the cover back on and seal it up and make sure that it works.